Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden, Will Southard, and Tommy Yu.
Welcome to the PPP presented by Legit Football. My name is Brian. Please, as always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening or watching. And tell all of those friends, because that's how we keep growing this Pigskin Party. I'm back. I took a week off in sunny Florida. It was hot as hell. It rained every day, but I guess I had a vacation. But you know what made me feel better is my co-host, Tommy Yu, held down the fort. I listened to the episodes. You did a great job. I left it in good hands, Tommy. How you feeling today, man?
Oh, now that our fearless leader is back, I feel like I have more direction in my life. The whole last week, I was like a lost puppy. I was like, what do I do? When do I even eat? How should I get changed out of my PJs? I don't know what to do. And my wife is like, what's wrong? I was like, Brian's gone. I don't know what to do. But now that you're back, we have some semblance of professionalism and everything just feels right again. Everything's great.
Well, I'm glad that I can provide that kind of order to the chaos that's in your life. So you're welcome. Speaking of lost puppies, it's just me and Tommy. We do not have the full crew again this week because Will, our other co-host, is yet again on his way to another murdery hotel room, and he will not be to said hotel room in time to record. But you know what? We lose one Will, we gain another. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest. And what better guest? And I'm a little disappointed. I'm always disappointed when Will's not on the show doing his quote-unquote work thing. But I'm especially disappointed because our guest ties into both of us. And here's why. His name, and this is his real name, is Will McFadden. Come on. He's like the blend. He's like the perfect guest for the PPP.
The most ambitious crossover of all times.
I know, right? It feels like we scripted it, like we wrote it up. Like, no, this is a real guy, covers the NFL, Will McFadden. He's a writer for The Falcoholic and a former reporter for the Atlanta Falcons. Will, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm doing super well. Yeah, I mean, absolutely always intriguing to locate another McFadden in the world, and one that actually spells the name correctly. You know, there's no Y.
Don't put a Y in it.
It's not one D. There, it's the tried and true. We are the probably green bloods. You know, the Irish, just 100%. Strong McFaddens. So I'm glad that I can split the gap here and really just be the crossover. You got the Will, you got the McFadden. Makes for a great podcast, and I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Oh yeah, well, we're super excited to have you, and as those who are listening can tell, obviously, guy writes for the Falcons, used to work for the report on the Atlanta Falcons. Our team deep dive of the week is going to be, surprise, surprise, the Atlanta Falcons. So we will go deep into Atlanta this week. Before we get to the news, though, nice, Anthony, well done. Getting better at those mascot sounds. But before we get into the news, you heard at the top that I did say that the PPP is presented by Legit Football. I had a busy day getting caught up from my vacation. I actually didn't tell Tommy or Anthony about this, so they're learning about it with our guest, Will, and any of you who are listening right now. So we have partnered with a daily NFL newsletter, brand new, where they're going to feature the top 5 stories in football direct to your inbox every single morning, completely for free. So they're called Legit Football. If you want to check them out, highly recommended. I subscribed. His first newsletter, he featured an interview with the great Peter King. That's how he got on my radar. So if you've ever had Morning Brew or The Skim or any of these kind of daily newsletters, there's not one for the NFL. Well, guess what? Now there is. So we've partnered with Legit Football. Go over to legitfootball.com to sign up or look for a link in the episode description. I'll be putting it in there. And it's free. And if you love the NFL, which if you're listening to this podcast, I hope you do, because we don't provide any other entertainment value except the occasional pop culture reference in NFL talk. So hopefully you love the NFL. Check out Legit Football. We're going to have the creator of Legit Football on the podcast in the next week or two, still working out logistics, but you'll be hearing a lot about them in the coming weeks. Make sure to check them out. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the news. There actually is quite a bit of news for a late June week in the NFL offseason, and news broke yesterday. I wanted to start with this because as someone who's a big proponent of civil rights, of human rights, this is something that meant a lot to me personally, and that is that Las Vegas Raiders defensive end Carl Nassib announced on Instagram that he is gay. Now, the reason this is important is he is the first openly gay active NFL player on an NFL roster. There have been players who have come out after they've retired, after they've left the league. No one has ever come out while they're actually playing. Carl Nassib is only 28. He was drafted by Cleveland, spent a little bit of time with the Buccaneers, and has been signed a 3-year deal with the Raiders. So this is an active defensive end who plays, and he put on Instagram, he said he didn't want it to make a big deal of it. He hoped that there comes a point where this is not something that's newsworthy and it's just a matter of fact. But there are a lot of players, a lot of young kids, young boys looking up to someone like this who might be gay, might be LGBTQ community, and will be inspired by a player. So I wanted to start off with this. I wanted to go around the horn and get everybody's thoughts on this. Tommy, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Carl Nassib announcing to the world that he is an openly gay NFL player?
You know, I think it was honestly beautiful. I know a lot of people kind of are really torn because it is a pretty polarizing topic. I've met a lot of people in the crowd that were like, oh, that has nothing to do with football, so why even bring it up? Who cares? Let's take it out of football. But my thought is exactly kind of what you mentioned. A lot of NFL players, after they're active or when they retire and all that kind of stuff, then they decide to come out, or whenever they decide his time is right. And the one thing that I love that he mentioned and the way that he was able to articulate it was he's a very private person. He didn't want to make it a big deal. And he even mentioned saying maybe in the future, we won't have to make an announcement. It will just something that you can say. Everyone's like, okay, cool. That's great. And the reason why I think it's so beautiful isn't the fact that he had the courage to do so as an active NFL player, but just the community and the way it reacted. I'm sure all of us here, I know we don't want to get overtly political, but anytime where the NFL is involved with any kind of big announcement or anything like that, I'm sure we all know the fiasco of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. I know that's a completely different stance, but anytime you leave yourself vulnerable that is not football related, but put the spotlight on you, you're ready for criticism. And all over the community in the NFL have been nothing but supportive. And I can't help but think if it was just a decade ago, the response may have been different. And I don't want to make that assumption, but the fact that everyone has been kind of receiving it in such a great way, to me, it's a really beautiful thing to see, and it kind of shows the progress that everyone has been making so far up to this point. So I think the message itself of Carl Nassib doing it was awesome. It's a big step in the right direction, but also I don't want to kind of shy away and put the spotlight back on how the whole community has been reacting. That's equally as beautiful to me.
Yeah, I've seen nothing but positive. I'm sure there's some trolly comments across social media, but as far as NFL media, as far as the NFL themselves, various players, I saw J.J. Watt, I saw Saquon Barkley, a number of them coming out in support, which is really nice to see. And that's why this is important, is the trickle effect that has. One active NFL player coming out as openly gay. There are certainly others that will maybe feel a little bit more confident to do it, and then eventually it'll be to a point where it isn't a news story, and that's actually the point. We want to get to that point. So, Will, as someone who has covered the Falcons, has covered the league closely, what kind of impact do you think this will have on active NFL players?
Well, I mean, I think it's a huge first step, right? And having been inside of NFL locker room for the past 4 years, there are no secrets inside of, or at least there shouldn't be, the best teams. The locker room is a space for everybody to come together, regardless of their background, regardless of any differences. It's a uniting place. And it reminded me a lot of the Falcons when everything kind of happened in 2020. But even before that, they've started something that they call the Social Justice Committee. And really, it was to bring awareness, and it was led by guys like Grady Jarrett, led by guys like Stephen Means, players like that, to bring awareness to racial injustice in not only the city of Atlanta, but in the United States. And to me, like, I thought of that immediately when I saw this news, and the locker room, regardless of your background, because there are people in the locker room who have different beliefs, who aren't necessarily on the same side as their teammate when it comes to racial issues or when it comes to, LGBTQ issues or things like that. But ultimately, they're there to do the same job. They're there to accomplish the same goal. And in order to do that, you really need to be as open and honest and understand, hey, you may not agree where I'm coming from, but this is where I'm coming from, and you have to deal with that and accept me for who I am, because we have to go out there and battle together, and we've got to stand arm in arm and go out there and beat the other team. And so I really do applaud, Carl for this. I enjoyed him immensely when I watched Hard Knocks when the Browns were on it. I applaud the Raiders organization.
Finance advice.
Exactly. The dude seems like an amazing guy. And so I applaud the Raiders organization. It seems like they stand behind him 100%, the same way that Arthur Blank stood behind, the Atlanta Falcons players 100% when they wanted to do the social justice committee. So I think, and I really hope that this will be a little bit of a gateway into the rest of the league becoming much more aware, familiar, and accepting of this type of thing, because ultimately, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, the number of times that I was in a locker room as a media member, and not to be too crude, but like guys coming in and out of the shower, in and out of the rooms, and with no towel or whatever, like that happens in a locker room. Coming in and out of the shower room, whatever, like none of that matters. All that matters is the job you're there to do, supporting one another, and you kind of set the differences aside. I'm sure they know Carl as the man and not what his beliefs are in one way or another. And none of that matters when you're trying to win football games. And I really do support the Raiders and Carl in supporting him. So, it's great. I really hope that this is a little bit of a threshold that is crossed for the league, and players feel much more empowered to just be themselves, because inside of locker rooms, players are themselves, and they should be able to be themselves in the public eye as well.
And like you said, the best teams operate almost like families. They have that kind of bond, that kind of brotherhood. To get that kind of team chemistry, you have to be open. You have to know everything about the other, their family life, their personal, what they like, what their interests are, whatever, who they are, so that you're going to war. You're going to battle with your brothers, and you want to feel comfortable that everybody is accepting and is on the same page. So it's beautiful.
Brian,
that he came out.
One of my favorite stories, just real quick, when I was up in my cubicle in Flowery Branch at the office, I have you reference pop culture. I'm going to reference the most pop culture-y of pop culture, but I have a picture of an episode of The Office where Michael Scott it's one of those where the Michael Scott Paper Company episodes, and he's sitting in front of the whiteboard, and he has the quote, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, quote Wayne Gretzky, quote Michael Scott, and he's just kind of sitting there like the thinker kneeling in front of it. So I have that framed, and it was on my desk. And the starting left tackle for the Falcons, Jake Matthews, was walking upstairs to go, maybe talk to Dan Quinn or get coffee or whatever, and saw that picture, stopped, and we had a 15-minute conversation about The Office, because he's a huge Office fan. Like, those are things that we forget sometimes, that NFL players are also people too, and they're subjected to all of the things that we're subjected to. They have all of our same interests, and they should be allowed to be who they are. And inside of locker rooms, they are. But again, like, they should be allowed to be that in the public eye as well.
Yeah, one thing I want to add really quickly to what Will said is ultimately it doesn't matter at all. And in a weird way, I'm glad that Carl Nassib kind of waited a little bit into his career to then come out with his sexual orientation, only because we know a little bit about him. We saw him in Hard Knocks, and people are like, oh, he's just a normal dude. So people who have this weird constraint or thought being like, oh, someone who is gay acts very weird, I have to act differently. And we're like, wait, I acted like myself with Carl all the time, and now because he came out, all of a sudden it's not, oh, now he's gay. No, he was always that way, but he has just now felt comfortable enough to come out. So it's almost
he is a masculine dude. That is a masculine, big defensive end.
So any of like the pre-constructs or whatever you predetermine what you believe a gay person may be, it's really cool that now we're like, oh no, that's Carl. And him being gay doesn't define him. That's just a trait. Just like someone on the team might be a vegan or a vegetarian. So who cares? I'm still going to go to war with this person. Their sexual orientation in a similarity with that Will was kind of articulating. That's what popped into my head. It ultimately doesn't matter. Oh, this person's favorite color is orange. Oh, cool. Okay, well, let's get this on third down. Let's see how we can convert this kind of thing. Like, so it's kind of really, really neat that Will was able to bring up that kind of point of view, because at the end of the day, it honestly doesn't matter. And I know that's where we're striving to be, but I think this is, and I don't want to blow it out of context, but it will be a historical day. Now, hopefully this opens that door for people to be like, all right, cool. He had enough strength to kind of take that spotlight. Now, hopefully this will open the doors for more to follow and things like that.
And it's a beautiful thing, and it's not lost that he did this during Pride Month, targeted when there's a lot of awareness around the LGBTQ community. So once again, Carl, we applaud you. We accept everyone on the Pigskin Party podcast. Unless you're not a Star Wars fan, then you're dead to me. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Eagles guy threw in his shot to Dallas. Sorry, Cowboys listeners. All right. So this next bit was this next bit was something that our co-host Will brought up, and as a Brady stan, clearly wanted to discuss. And yes, he's not on the show, and we could have moved it to next week, but I don't want to wait. This is topical, so I wanted to bring it up. I will share what his thoughts were, even though he's not on the show, and he never listens back when he's not on, so we could say whatever we want about him. He's not going to hear this. So
yeah, Will actually said he hates Brady now. He is no longer a fan of Brady, never liked him, and he was just bandwagoning over to a winning quarterback, so now his new Brady is Mahomes. That's what he wanted me to reiterate with everyone.
That's right. The new GOAT versus the old GOAT. Two GOATs for those of you following the Madden 22 news. This all happened, Tommy, apparently since last week when he wore the double beer thing with the Brady across. So this is recent news. We're breaking it on the PPP. Will does not like Brady anymore. Anyway, so there was a promo that was put out for HBO's The Shop. That's the show with LeBron James, and they sit in the barbershop and they talk with different celebrities. And Tom Brady was in the promo for a few seconds. He was describing his free agency process last year. And one of the things he says in the quotes is he described a team that ended up pulling out in the end, was not actually one of the final teams that was gunning for him. But he said, "You're sticking with that, MFer?" And so what I wanted to do, and it was credit to Will for bringing this up, is I wanted to speculate on what team he's talking about, right? There was tons of different theories on social media about who he's talking about. Will, our co-host, thought it could be Baker Mayfield and the Browns. But I wanted to go around and Will, we'll start with you on this. Do you have an instinct of who Brady could have been talking about in that clip?
Oh, absolutely. It was 100% a shot at Tony Romo and CBS Sports. I mean, Brady's trying to be in the booth. He's trying to break down some plays. He's trying to get that next big contract. No. That
was great. I didn't see that coming. I'm like, Romo? Cowboys? Oh, CBS. Got it.
Well, but I actually kind of love this late career Tom Brady just as a celebrity vibe that he's given off, because I would love for him to be in the booth one day and just sharing all that knowledge. I know he doesn't need to be because he's got all the money in the world and so many rings that he can't lift his hands anymore. But
and he's going to be playing until he's 70, so we might not see that. But yeah,
I mean, he's going to outlive literally all of us. But I saw on Twitter kind of a notion that could it have been maybe the Saints and could it have been maybe Drew Brees, which Falcons, both fan and having covered the team, there were absolutely times over the past, year, 2 years where Brees was declining. Yeah, and it was noticeable. And I think that for all the Taysom Hill crap that he gets, like that Sean Payton understood that he had to probably get a little creative with the offense. And I don't necessarily think Tom Brady would disrespect Drew Brees in that way, because Drew Brees should go down as a top 6 quarterback of all time. You could make the argument maybe top 3, but I don't think Tom Brady would do that. I just like the notion that Tom Brady would disrespect Drew Brees and the Saints in that way. So that's what I'm going to go with, because he did still end up in the NFC South, and it doesn't really make any difference if he's with the Saints or with the Buccaneers, because he can win a Super Bowl with both. So I'm going to say that he was just taking shots at Drew Brees, if not Tony Romo, which is my personal headcanon.
Now, I love both of those answers, the Romo one especially, but the Brees, the fact that Brady knocks Brees out in the playoffs in his last game, is going to break his passing record this year, and then throws an extra dig like, why didn't you replace him with me? Oh, that is beautiful. Tommy, that's going to be tough to top, but let's hear, who do you think Brady was talking about in that promo clip?
No, I definitely won't be able to top that, but I
hope you
really
don't
sat
steal
down,
mine.
looked at the rosters and things like that, and really thought, all right, let's get into the mind of Tom Brady. Who was he trashing? What team would he wanted to have gone to? He probably wants to win, and one kind of stood out to me a little bit, and it was the LA Rams. I mean, at the time, they still had Jared Goff, right? And so he was probably like, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but it looked like McVay kind of wanted an out, obviously. Like, as soon as he could get Stafford, he's like, oh, my God.
Not good. He did want it out. He got rid of the guy.
He wanted it out. He's like, oh, my God, let's do this. But this is 1 year,
there's a public
little
love
bit
affair
before the whole Stafford thing. So my thought is Brady's like, all right, McVay, I mean, you have Donald, you have Ramsey. Imagine adding me. I can make Kupp amazing, Robert Woods amazing.
Him and Cooper
I can
Kupp,
do it all.
that's like Edelman on steroids. Oh, that was
Exactly.
great.
And like McVay was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I don't know why I chose that to be his
That's like
impression,
a John Gruden voice. I don't see how
I know, right? That was a terrible impression.
No.
But
McVay used to
was
work for
probably
Gruden,
super
but they don't
happy.
sound alike.
Yeah, but then the front office was probably like, yeah, I'm sorry that we humored you, McVay, but we're not actually going to do this. We're going to see if, Goff can maybe turn it around, or we'll see what we can do, but we're not going after Brady right now. And then he was sort of like, oh, damn it. And so he probably calls up. He's like, yo, Tom, as much as I would love for you to be on the Rams and, win us a Super Bowl because we somehow carry Goff all the way over there, we can't. And then he's probably like, are you kidding me right now? You're going with that guy? So that's kind of what my gut said when I was kind of looking down. I was like, this makes the most sense to me right now.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. That's a straightforward logic, especially at the time, because that was before, obviously, they made the trade for Stafford. So we all knew that now that, I think we knew before that McVay was looking to get rid of Goff. We knew that towards the end of last season. But I think mine is the most on the nose, and I'm glad you didn't mention it, Tommy. I was worried that you would. And that's the 49ers. This is a guy who played behind him in New England, and he forced him out because he didn't want him behind. Belichick was already getting his Jimmy G thing ready, and Brady's like, no, I'm going to go, and I'm going to win you a few more Super Bowls. Get rid of this joker. Send him to San Francisco to a stacked team with an amazing offensive coach. And but Jimmy G's still the starter. So... And he's from the Bay Area. Brady is originally from the Bay Area, so It just seems to be too perfect that is who he was referring to. Could it be Baker Mayfield? Sure. Could it be Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee? Right? There's a connection there. But no, I firmly believe that it was the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy G, his former, I don't even want to call him protege, his former understudy in New England. Understudy who went to San Francisco. And they've got a Super Bowl caliber roster. We saw that 2 years ago. So Jimmy G is the MFer in my mind.
Brian, is that the right fit though? Because I remember a story about Matt Ryan with Kyle Shanahan, and one of the things that he kind of had to get used to was turning his back to the defense. The Kyle Shanahan, really, to sell the play action, you have to sell the run, and it's the kind of the wave of NFL offense play calling right now, that's in vogue. But Matt Ryan wasn't comfortable turning his back to the defense. He wanted to scan the defense. And throughout his career, Tom Brady really hasn't had to do that too much. So I would have been really interested if that was in fact where he went. I have no doubt that a Tom Brady, Kyle Shanahan offense would have been amazing, because those two guys are
They could have figured
amazing.
it out, yeah.
But it would have been really, really interesting to see what that union looked like, given that Tom Brady's in year 17, 18, 19, I have no idea, infinity in the NFL, and Kyle Shanahan is literally grown up.
He's going into 21st season. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got two entrenched guys in what they do. I would have actually been fascinated to see how that unfolded.
I completely agree. On paper, not a good fit from an offensive scheme standpoint. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan, heavily predicated on play action, need a solid run game. That has never really been Brady's thing. He's got makes the checks at the line. He calls his own plays, and Shanahan is not somebody that he's going to want anybody taking play calling duties away from him. But it would have been fascinating and fun, and that's why we like covering the league, and would have been certainly a fun experiment that we won't get to see, and we'll probably see 2 more Bucs Super Bowls, and then he'll go off in a blaze of glory and hopefully leave us forever. As a Dolphins fan, I still have a little bit of burn from Brady. Respect him, GOAT, yada yada, but if we can avoid talking about him anymore, I'm fine with that. All right, thank you, Anthony. Just dig the knife a little deeper. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about another, this time burgeoning quarterback, and that is Josh Allen, who got his team one game away from the Super Bowl last year, made a huge leap in his development in year 3 for the Buffalo Bills. Like any great quarterback, he is due to get a new deal sometime in the near future. There are other quarterbacks on the docket, Lamar Jackson being one of them, Baker Mayfield. So there's kind of this chess game when there's multiple, especially around quarterbacks, because they're all going to reset each other. They're all going to one-up each other. One gets the deal, the next gets a 1 million more guaranteed or whatever it is. So we don't know exactly when he's going to get paid, but we know he's going to get paid. And an article recently came out from Ryan Talbot of NewYorkUpstate.com, and he was saying that obviously he's going to command top-tier money. He's was an MVP candidate for much of the season last year, but reportedly wants to structure the deal to help the team stay competitive. What that means, that's for us to debate here. So I'll start with you on this, Tommy. What are your thoughts on Josh Allen? Is this just talk? Is he going to posture and get the biggest deal possible? Apparently he really enjoys the city of Buffalo, playing there. I think he's a great fit personality-wise for what it means to be a Buffalo Bill, but is he going to actually structure his contract in a way that actually can be team-friendly? What are your thoughts?
You know, I think so in a weird way, only because I feel like Josh Allen's fit with Buffalo, it's not that he doesn't owe them anything, but they did take a chance on him, and the way that they've been able to develop Josh Allen, literally every single year, he has gotten better. And I feel like he is definitely aware of the fact that, hey, I took a monumental jump this past season. I mean, he's made big strides every single season, but this past season was the biggest, and elephant in the room, Stephon Diggs came onto the team and that helped unlock his potential. And I feel like he is aware of that. So I feel like Josh, especially the narrative right now, I feel like every single year we always see the top 10 highest paid quarterback list and be like, all right, how far did they ever go to the playoffs? Blah, 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 blah. And so I feel like he definitely sees some of these statistics and say, you know what? Like, at what point is it when will it break the camel's back? I remember when people are kind of guessing what Patrick Mahomes was going to get. They were even saying, like, oh, is he going to get, like, partial ownership of Kansas City? And then they're going to give him this and that. And I was like,
give it to him. If that's what he wants, give it to him.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, these rumors were coming up. And I was like, how much can you actually pay one player? Yes, quarterback is the most important position out of almost any sport. But how much if you're paying one quarterback like 45% of your cap, and then the rest of your team is like,
almost any sport?
Luck.
What sport is there more? Is there maybe curling? Is there curlers out there?
Oh man, you try to curl without a sweeper. Oh, it's game over. You're done. You're done for. But in all honesty, I feel like I'm a little bit torn because Josh Allen, he earned every single cent of whatever his next contract's going to be. So when we say team friendly, it's almost backhanded because as a fan, we're thinking, awesome, he is structuring his contract so the Buffalo Bills can get even more talent for him. But what team friendly actually means is maybe giving him less guaranteed money, maybe being able to cut him like years down. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but like these are situations that come up that make a deal team friendly. It's not just taking less money. There's a lot of implications, and when you kind of garner the respect that Josh Allen has gotten,
you can backload the salaries and the bonuses so that the first few years
it's
are
like
team
kicking
friendly.
the can.
And that's what they did with
will.
Mahomes. That's what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. He's really got, I think, 2 years before it skyrockets.
And so I feel like he is definitely going to try his best to be able to make it quote unquote team friendly enough to still surround himself with talent. But at the same time, I am always pushing for the player. I feel like they should get unless, of course, it's easy to say this as an Eagles fan because Josh Allen isn't a part of Philadelphia. But I honestly think he deserves every penny that he's gotten. But I really wouldn't be surprised if maybe this starts a trend if he goes that route, saying, hey, let's make it a little bit more team friendly because I am aware enough that one player can't win a Super Bowl.
Will, Matt Ryan just restructured his contract prior to the draft to be more team-friendly. Obviously, he's in a completely different part of his career. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Josh Allen, what are the kind of things he can do to make it a more team-friendly contract, or is this just kind of like PR talk?
Well, the Matt Ryan thing is interesting because it's one of those scenarios where everybody, like the reason the Falcons were in such a cap hell situation that has been used, frankly, kind of too much, I think, in Atlanta over the years, but really did fit this year, is that their top 5 guys accounted for more cap space than any other team in the NFL. And Matt Ryan and Julio Jones were a big part of that. But, not to quote a YouTube video from the 2009 era, but let's go inside of the mind of a Josh Allen and look at what he got this past season. He had Stephon Diggs added to this roster. I think he understands, coming from Wyoming, that you need players around you to really succeed, especially at quarterback. And frankly, quarterbacks are defined based on their wins and losses. And you can be an amazing quarterback, but if your team is not good, you're not going to be perceived as an elite player. I think Matthew Stafford is the example here. I know Anthony's going to agree with me, but if you are a really good player, but you're not successful, the quarterback position is the one that gets punished the most for that. And it makes 100% sense to me that Josh Allen understands, hey, I need a good defense. I need good wide receivers. I need a good offensive line. All of those players make money and they deserve to be paid what they're worth. And to get the best players, you need to pay them like they're the best players. And the way that salary caps continue to go up, the way that salaries continue to go up, even taking a pay cut, I mean, what are we talking about? Is it the difference between making $35 million a year and $30 million a year? Like, if you give me $30 million a year, I'm good. I'm not asking you for another damn thing ever.
Give me the 5. I'll take the difference. Just give me the 5.
There you go. I'm happy with that. So, I think that Josh Allen kind of understands that. I think he understands that his perception is starting to change in the league, but you look around at another team in the AFC East, Tom Brady, who we were just talking about, famously kind of took a little bit of a pay cut, and his teams were winning Super Bowls left and right. So I would look at Josh Allen kind of having that same mindset, and there are ways, to Tommy's point, that you can structure a contract. If I was Buffalo, or more specifically, if I was Josh Allen, I would look at this and say, give me an incentive-laden deal that's not necessarily going to be on the books for salary cap, because that's the way the Bills should be looking at it, is, okay, we're going to pay you, but we're going to pay you in ways that don't necessarily give us the cap crunch that a guaranteed salary does, or a signing bonus does. Like, all the restructuring Matt Ryan's salary is only furthering the cap hit for the Falcons next year and the year after that. And the reason the Julio trade was so big for Atlanta was because they got his guaranteed salary off the books. The reason they waited until June 2nd to try to make that move was to get all of the signing bonuses off the books, which all come due if you cut a player or if you trade a player. So all of that is guaranteed, and the team is on the books for that. But there are some ways that a team can still give a player the money they're worth without necessarily taking on huge cap hits. And the 49ers, to bring up your point earlier with kind of Jimmy G, they were really interesting they front-loaded his deal immensely. And so now he's movable. Now you can get rid of Jimmy G, but he also got a lot of money on the front end of that deal. And so I
much
wonder
of it was spent injured and on the bench. Yep.
Exactly. So I wonder if Josh Allen may not. There's some flexibility here with both parties, but if Josh truly is just a team player and says, "Hey, I'm good," to your point, $5 million, I'm good to go with that. Pay me $5 million and spend the other $30 million elsewhere, and we're going to go win a Super Bowl. If that's Josh Allen's mentality, God bless him, and go Bills.
I think there's two important things that you mentioned here, Will. One of them is the Wyoming connection, the fact that he played at such a small school where he was really devoid of talent. And yes, he was still raw. I mean, obviously, even in college, his completion percentage was in the 50s. But it helps to have talent around you. I don't think Justin Herbert does as well if he doesn't have a Keenan Allen to throw to, if he doesn't have a Mike Williams. Having that kind of talent makes such a difference. I saw it with Tua. Tua had certainly his own issues, the play calling we talked about before we started recording, but not having any true weapons, any difference makers that you can just count on to get the ball to, really can stunt your development. So I think he understands that coming from Wyoming. And also the Brady example, seeing what a quarterback who has almost as many rings as fingers at this point has done with New England and being able to have a say in some of the roster decisions in Tampa Bay and getting the right players, and clearly it has worked at 2 different teams in 2 different conferences, being able to be on a team-friendly deal, team-friendly, like you said, team-friendly. He's still gonna command 35 to 40 million. I mean, what did Dak just get? 41, 42? So Josh Allen could command more than that, and it could be an average of more than that, and maybe they just backload it. But he does deserve it. I was not a Josh Allen believer. Maybe that's my Dolphins bias speaking, but I definitely couldn't argue with the development over the course of last season. I watched a lot of Bills games, both because I love the NFL for this podcast, but also being in the AFC East, and he's the real deal at this point. You can say it's because of Brian Dable. You can say Sean McDermott's put the right cast around him. You can say it's because he got Stephon Diggs, but those facts still remain. He got them. He did what he had to do. He took his team 1 game away from the Super Bowl, and I think he's a competitor. He's clearly a competitor. Winning is something that is important. It's not all about the money. Yeah, I believe this. And on that note, we're talking about do we believe, do we not believe? Let's do another quick segment before we go into the Falcons deep dive of our training camp nuggets, fact or fiction. So we made this a whole segment earlier when we had Regina Wright on from the She Talks Football podcast. Me and Tommy were on as well. Also, when Will's always gone for these nugget fact or fiction segments, conveniently. So, but we're going to run through these quickly so we can get to the Falcons deep dive. So I'm going to say we're going to go through 4 different quotes that have come out of minicamp this past week, and I'll just quickly go to Tommy and Will, and you guys let me know if it's fact or fiction and why. So speaking of Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay says that Matthew Stafford is, quote, even better than advertised. This is actually, I believe, the second Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford quote we've brought up for the segment before. So I'll start with you for this, Tommy. Fact or fiction, Sean McVay says Matthew Stafford is even better than advertised. So as a caveat, Will is a first-time guest, and anybody who's never listened to this before, we're not saying they didn't say it. These are actual quotes. We're saying, is this smoke? Is this just camp talk? Or is this something we should actually pay attention to? Tommy.
This one, unfortunately, I will say fiction, because McVay has a way. He's kind of like Gruden. He talks everyone up, but this is not me saying Matt Stafford isn't good. I'm sure when Matt Stafford
Anthony
first came into LA, and threw the ball a couple of times, McVay was like, wow, I finally have a quarterback that could throw. This is fantastic. But he obviously knew what he was getting because they gave up. It was a pretty implicated trade with what was kind of given and stuff like that. So they gave up a good amount to get Stafford on there. So you can't say that he didn't know he was good. So I feel like it is a little bit of fiction because McVay has, like he said, he'll talk anyone up. Like if I was playing running back, he'd be like, oh yeah, that Tommy Yu guy, not that bad. I like his energy. All right, he could do something. Like he'd even make me sound good. So in a way, I feel like it is a little bit of the fiction.
Will, you actually mentioned Stafford as a quarterback who's always had talent and maybe not the best cast around him. What are your thoughts on Sean McVay's quote here?
I agree with Tommy. I think that Sean McVay has all of the incentive in the world to talk up Matthew Stafford. But that being said, I'm going to go with fact. I think that Matthew Stafford is a very talented quarterback. He's a good player. And I almost think that if we're going to judge the coach's words, I almost look at it more as though you were driving a Volvo and then you started driving a Maserati and you're like, well, goddamn, this car can just go, like it is fun to drive this car. I look good in it. It draws attention and there's some zip in this mobile. And I think that's what Matthew Stafford brings to this offense. I think he can make a few more plays, even as he's as old as he is, he's getting up there in age, but the arm strength is undeniable. The dude is tough as nails. And I just think that Sean McVay is very excited to have what he has, and we'll see if that lasts, but I buy it right now. I don't think this is just training camp talk. I think Sean McVay is really excited.
Yeah, I'm going to side with Will on this. I'm buying as well. I have said on this, I actually said at the time of the trade that Stafford is now a dark horse MVP candidate in my book,
Yep.
And the Rams have been a team ever since this trade happened where I believe they're a Super Bowl contender. So I'm going to stick with that narrative. I think that that's a good point that he's had Goff since he's been a head coach with LA. Yes, Stafford was good, but because of the surrounding cast he had in Detroit, maybe there was only so much advertising he could do. You get in there with the weapons that they have, a huge upgrade at running back, multiple wide receivers. You've got a solid tight end. Obviously, got a great defense. You've got a team, and he's able to be better than advertised. He's got more toys to play with. So I'm going to side with Sean McVay and say that this is a fact. I'm buying it. Okay, this is a quote from the player themselves. Broncos quarterback Drew Lock is feeling, quote, a lot more confident. So, Will, I'll start with you on this. Fact or fiction?
Oh, fiction. Absolutely fiction. You're not, if you're Denver, you're not in the Aaron Rodgers conversation if you're like, Drew Lock is going to be our guy. And I say this, it was interesting. When I was working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, we did a college football fantasy league, and I picked Drew Lock when he was at Missouri as my quarterback. Great pick. Love Drew Lock because of that season alone. So I'm a big Drew Lock fan. I wish him nothing but the best. 100% fiction. I feel a lot more confident. What are we talking about here? I feel a lot more confident having done 6 podcasts before this podcast. So I'm a great podcaster now, but I'm no Bill Simmons. You know, what are we doing here? Drew Lock, you're a good quarterback. Wish you nothing but the best, but cool. You're confident. You're not any better.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out the podcasting thing after 6-7 months, but we'll get there. Tommy, what are your thoughts? Fact or fiction on Mr. Drew Lock?
Oh, Will is absolutely right. This is straight fiction, only because I feel like Drew Lock can't do anything without looking behind his back now, right? Like, he could have a perfect practice.
2 times.
But
Teddy's passing him. It's not even just
Rodgers. He can do literally anything right now, and he has to be looking over his shoulder. Like, when he's watching film, he'd be like,
Kendall Hinton might pass him. Kendall Hinton's having a good camp.
Is Teddy still watching film? Oh, wait, do I know the playbook better? Oh, man, what else can I do? Like, I feel like his anxiety has to be at an all-time high because he knows that there is a time limit on how much longer he could hold on to this job. There is a reality, though, where he retains the starting role, and there is, once again, a reality where he shows up. He finally delivers on everything, and they're like, okay, we don't need Rodgers. We don't look silly for passing on Fields. We're okay. This is our guy. This is the guy we drafted. This is what we wanted. So that is a possibility, but it is absolute fiction because he had every chance to steal this job and hold on to it, and he's never done anything for me personally to be convinced that he can do it. He's shown flashes, but honestly, anyone can show flashes. I remember when A.J. Feely was at Philadelphia, he had flashes, but we all know how that kind of went. So I'm not comparing the two, but Will hit the nail on the head. Straight fiction.
I showed flashes in high school. That doesn't mean that I'm NFL caliber. I played defensive end, believe it or not. I got a couple sacks my senior year. I think we're all in agreement. If anyone who's listened to this show before know that we are not Drew Lock stands by any means. I think he's already the second best quarterback on that roster behind Teddy Bridgewater, feeling a lot more confident. What else is he going to say? Like, oh, I'm not that good. I haven't been great. I am very turnover prone. Yeah, you should just cut me. No, of course he's going to say he's feeling more confident. Yeah. We're all in agreement. Fiction here. Let's move on. Running back James Conner now plays for the Arizona Cardinals, says he and fellow Cardinals running back Chase Edmonds as a tandem are, quote, can be one of the best in the league. So, Tommy, we'll start with you on this. Can James Conner, who, after a great start to his career, really disappointed the last couple seasons in Pittsburgh, Chase Edmonds has shown flashes, especially for us fantasy football players, but do the two of them, can they be one of the best tandems in the league, or is this just posturing?
Okay. First, let me answer the question. I think it's straight fiction, mostly because I have eyeballs and I watched James Conner play the past however long his career is. He has been on a straight decline, always battling with injuries. You know, he has a great story and everything, but sometimes I feel like he has molasses or cement in his cleats or something because just the way he hits the holes and runs, he's very aggressive, but I'm just like, is he moving in slow motion? It doesn't make sense. And to kind of talk about Chase Edmonds really quick, everyone is so high on him all the time, which is understandable, but it's very apparent. If you just look at what the front office has seen, they don't view Chase Edmonds as the guy, which is fine because right now he gets to kind of play second fiddle or kind of that third down back role. But even when David Johnson was playing terribly or when he was out of town, what did they do? They didn't give Chase Edmonds the ball. They were just like, all right, let's go get Kenyon Drake. Now, Kenyon Drake didn't do well, and he flamed out. What did they do? Let's go get James Conner. So in a tandem, yes, it could work because I am projecting Arizona's offense to be a lot better. But at the same time, the best tandem, there are a lot of good running back tandems. I mean, just look over at Tampa Bay. Just look over at you could even look at Green Bay.
And you're clearly referring to Gio Bernard, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's Gio Bernard and I guess Lenny or, Jones, whatever. But just Gio alone. He alone would be amazing. Sorry, channeling my inner Will.
Co-host Will, if you're actually listening, you're welcome.
I know. No, he's not, though. But yeah, there are so many other tandems in my head. I would put maybe 10 teams before I even think about Arizona. So do they have the potential? Yes, because I project their offense will be a lot better, so they'll be pretty efficient. But efficiency isn't James Conner's game, so fiction.
Will, thoughts on James Conner and Chase Edmonds, one of the best tandems in the league?
Well, let me answer your question with a question. Was Kevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert one of the best tandems in the league? Because that's kind of what we're looking at here, right? One guy who could be the starter but is injured often, and one guy who's a lightning bolt
thrown in there. Yeah,
yeah, who sometimes can have a 100-yard game, but also can have a 20-yard game. Yeah, so I don't think that they're going to be the best running back tandem in the league. I frankly. You can either have somebody who goes for 100 yards or have somebody go for 20 yards. But there was a Falcons player back in the day called Antone Smith, or named Antone Smith, I guess that's what they called him. But he used to average something like
Florida State player
20 yards a carry. But the coaching staff never used him. They only gave him 5 carries a game. And I always will side with kind of the coaching staff because they see them day in and day out in practice. They understand their abilities, and there's a little bit of a misnomer where the running back is the one that makes the running game go, and the offensive line is what makes the running game go. So it kind of doesn't matter if James Conner is behind the Cowboys offensive line circa 2015. Yeah, he's probably 1,000-yard rusher. If he's behind a bad offensive line like the one they had in Pittsburgh, it kind of doesn't matter what James Conner can do. So no, I do not think that they can be one of the best running back duos in the league because I don't really have that much faith in Arizona's offensive line. And, I don't wish it upon him, but I kind of feel like James Conner is going to get dinged up throughout the year. And I don't know if Chase Edmonds is an every down back at this point. So fiction.
Completely agree. I certainly don't think this version of James Conner is an upgrade over Kenyon Drake. They're completely different runners, sure, but I think Drake worked well in that offense, especially as a pass-catching back. So it's not an upgrade. They weren't one of the best duos when Drake was there, so I can't say the same with James Conner replacing him. Completely agree with you guys. This is in the fiction category. So we've talked about the 49ers a few times. Let's talk about them again. The San Francisco head coach, Kyle Shanahan, on Jimmy G, who we've mentioned a few times already, quote, "I think Jimmy had his best spring since we've had him." We'll start with you on this, Will.
Kyle's trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't draft a quarterback
yes.
in the first round in one of the top 5 picks and then turn right around and say, no, the guy that we've had who, admittedly took him to a Super Bowl, but did not win that Super Bowl, and then has presided over a few losing seasons. No, you don't turn around and say, no, well, 9 years into the league, he's had his best spring that we've ever seen. He's really turned the corner. Absolutely not. This is a nudge of Jimmy's ego, but also hey, John Gruden, you want to come get Jimmy G? He's had his best spring ever. That's what this is, 100% fiction.
Tommy, agree?
You know what? I want to. I do believe everything Will said, but I'll play devil's advocate and say, no, this is a straight up fact. Only because if, how I was saying how McVay and Gruden like to, just blow smoke, talk everyone up. Shanahan is the complete opposite. He will tell you straight up what he feels and he believes. Like, look at Dante Pettis' career. He was just like, no, he straight up sucks. Like, you need to get better. He did not help his confidence at all, and he was just straight up with him, even with the media and stuff. He said, no, Dante Pettis is struggling. And one thing that I recall very strongly is week 14 when the 49ers played the Washington football team. Brandon Ayuk, rookie, he had his career best game up to that point. He had 10 catches for 119 yards. And everyone's like, oh, how did you feel about Brandon? How did you feel about Brandon? And He literally said, and I quote, "I still think he'd play a lot better. I think he could have last night too. I think he took a small step back last night, and I'm hoping he'll take 2 forward next week." And this is after coming off of a career game. And so he's not, maybe you could say this is just tough love in the way that he motivates his players and things like that. But as much as I absolutely believe, and I know what Will is saying, he's trying to trade him right now. But I mean, every other GM has eyeballs. Just because you're saying, oh no, he's having a great couple of practices, that isn't suddenly going to make a GM be like, all right, nope, Jimmy G is the real deal. Let's go get him. I don't care what his tape looked like. I think up until now, we know what Jimmy G is, kind of like a game manager. He won't really win you a game, but hopefully he won't lose you a game either. And obviously he has some durability issues as well. So I think this is straight fact, because I feel like although he has a little bit to gain to lie and say he looks great, right now from my past history of what I've seen from Kyle Shanahan, he's usually pretty blunt when it comes to his assessment with his players.
You bring up a good point, Tommy, but Jimmy G started with the 49ers in the 2017 season. This is the 5th offseason they've had him. So even you can say, oh, he lost one to injury, but he was at every offseason. So you're telling me that after 4 years in a Kyle Shanahan offense, all of a sudden it clicked for him? Right? And he was in the league in New England prior to that?
I absolutely can make that defense for sure. Especially a lot of the times I know a lot of people can say, oh yeah, the game has slowed down. You're like, well, he's been in the NFL for a pretty long time, and he's like year 4, year 5 in the Niners. So you're telling me all of a sudden it clicked. I absolutely hear the doubt and everything like that as well. But a lot of his career games that he's played, when he actually plays, he's not that bad. It's just he's not on the field very often. So you might say he's been with the 49ers.
He did play in the
4 or
Super
5
Bowl
years.
and missed a pretty wide open.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, because that was the argument I was trying to make. He's not on the field very often, which sucks. So absolutely, when you say he's been with the Niners for like 3-4 years, whatever, heading into
by the way, that was
a
a dig at Jimmy G. That was not a compliment.
Oh, no,
he played in the Super Bowl and he lost.
So let me finish, if you can, or if I
yes,
may.
Sir.
He has not been on the field very long, so I don't understand why it's rocket science for being like, wait, how is he getting better? Well, I mean, he hasn't been playing very often, which is definitely an indictment against him for his durability issues. But at the same time, you can make the argument saying, well, did we see all of Jimmy G? Because every single time he plays, his seasons are cut short and things like that, so maybe we haven't seen everything. This isn't him saying, oh, Jimmy G, he took that Josh Allen step. No, he's just saying, this is just the best spring he's had. So I'm literally taking word for word what he said, and also using the history of how he usually doesn't gas people up, especially when it comes to at least a wide receiver role. So I definitely agree that he could be saying, oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, please trade for him. But at the same time, I don't think him saying, oh, he's had a great, great spring, the best I've ever seen. We all know what Jimmy G is. No one's going to now call up saying, oh, because Shanahan said he's having the best run, we're going to trade. No, that's not going to happen. So I feel like he's genuinely saying, hey, he's doing pretty well. Whereas any other time he said, no, my players kind of suck.
You know what, Tommy? I'll roll with you here. Maybe he just had bad springs previously. Maybe he just comes to camp and he's like not clicking.
Bad, and he was just like,
maybe
oh,
this
finally doesn't suck.
Right. This is like a mediocre. This is like a
he set the bar
even
so
keel
low in
and
the past, and now he's like,
yeah.
He looks the best. I'm not saying he's good, but this is the best for Jimmy G.
Yeah, I'm going to use Will's analogy earlier. So Jimmy G is the Volvo in this scenario. Maybe the Volvo got a tune-up. Maybe the Volvo drives better than the Volvo has ever driven before. But you got a Maserati and Trey Lance. You got a Maserati behind you and Trey Lance, and no matter how good that Volvo looks and no matter how fresh that engine is, it's still not a Maserati. So we'll say down the middle. Yes, could Kyle Shanahan be telling the truth and saying it's the best spring? Sure. Does that mean anything other than, just talk because Trey Lance is the future of this team? I think absolutely not. All right, one more point, and this is not something I put in the show notes. I'm guessing you put it in it, Tommy, so I'm going to let you read this one.
I didn't put this in. I think our fearless producer, Anthony, may have put this in. Lions GM Brad Holmes said Jared Goff is more than a bridge option. Could be Detroit's long-term QB. And because I had the privilege of reading this out, Brian, let me get your take on this.
First of all, Anthony has never added to show notes in the entire time he's been the producer. Kudos for you. I just assumed it was Tommy. This is history. I didn't Lions, but Anthony, good for you for taking initiative. I love it. All right, so here's my thought. I've said from the beginning, Jared Goff is always a bridge quarterback. If you're saying anything other than that, he's still Jared Goff, right? He's a Volvo. I love this analogy, Will. I'm just going to keep using it. He's a Volvo. He's got a different you moved the Volvo from LA to Detroit. Yes, that's Motor City and all that, and maybe they're able to tune up the Volvo a little bit, but his supporting cast is going to be worse. The offensive line is going to be good. The running game, the running back talent there is actually pretty good, but he's got no weapons short of maybe TJ Hawkinson. How could he not be a bridge option? How is he, in order to not be a bridge option in Detroit, you're going to have to be successful enough to take that team out of the QB contention in the draft. So with a roster that needs a lot of help on defense, a lot of help in the pass catching, and every level of the defense, from secondary linebacker to defensive line and pass rush. Yes, they've got, I like Dan Campbell. I like what they've set up there. The arrow's pointing up, but the arrow is already starting really low. So in order for him to play well enough to not just be a bridge quarterback, he's going to have to be a playoff quarterback. How in any scenario is Jared Goff going to lead the Lions to the playoffs? Anthony, I'm sorry. Thank you for putting this in there. Happy to talk about it. But I'm going to say this is straight fiction. This is just Brad Holmes talking up. He's a new GM, just wants to talk up and get the fans and everyone else excited about what they've got going on. Because without that, everybody knows this is a rebuilding year in Detroit. Everybody knows that this is not the year that they will be successful. I'm not saying that they're not building something that could be successful down the road, but it's not going to be 2021. So you got to say something to get everybody hyped up. So 100% fiction.
Oh, man. I know Anthony didn't like to hear that, but let me throw it over to Will. Does it sound a little bit more optimistic? Are you going to be able to put the smile on Anthony's face, or are you leaning to also thinking this is fiction
so what
as
I
well,
would say
Will?
is that if Brad Holmes is the one saying it, I'm a little bit more likely to believe it, because Brad Holmes came up through the organization that drafted Jared Goff and was there throughout his kind of heyday. Obviously worked very closely with Les Snead, knows Jared Goff. The reason I think this trade happened is because Brad Holmes is in Detroit. And, I think that they saw that, hey, we can make the postseason with Jared Goff. We can make the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Whether or not that's a little bit of a misguided belief, I tend to think that it probably is. But there was a time, I believe, during that I think it was 18 season when the Rams went to the Super Bowl, that we were sitting here talking about, at least in Flowery Branch in the Falcons facility, is Jared Goff in the MVP conversation? If he ends the year on a run, is he finishing third in the MVP vote like Derek Carr was in 2016? So that's probably where Jared Goff belongs, is maybe listed with like the Derek Carrs of the world, in that they're not lighting the world on fire, but are they enough of a quarterback where if you have the right scenario around them and the right coaching staff around them, where you could get to the Super Bowl? I think the answer is yes. So sure, I'll say that maybe it's fact, or at least that Brad Holmes believes that it's fact, that Jared Goff is more than a bridge option.
Tommy, I want your notes quickly, and then I do want to hear from Anthony on this. So, Anthony, come on in. Let Tommy give his thoughts, and then we will let you chime in on this one.
I would love to hear Anthony as well. I'll keep mine pretty short. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to side with fiction. Similar to what Will said, Brad Holmes knows the in and outs of Jared Goff. And I feel like the Rams did a fantastic job giving Jared Goff, or a quarterback, everything they want. A great defense, a great offensive-minded head coach, good weapons around him, everything, and they still couldn't win it all. And a lot of that could be because of Jared Goff. And now when you're a GM taking over for the Lions, trying to rebuild that team, how can you do better than what the Rams have given Goff for the years that he was there? I don't see it getting much better than that. And so Brad Holmes to say, Jared Goff is more than a bridge option, kind of like what we'll say. Maybe he is convinced that is true, but it's very hard for me to believe that they will be able to set up a better situation for Goff in Detroit than he had over with LA. And unfortunately, he was still unable to walk away with the Lombardi.
All right, Anthony, you get your shot. You put it in the show notes. Come on in and let us know your thoughts. Fact or fiction here?
All right, hey guys. Fact, of course.
Surprise.
But let me put something into perspective for you. In 2018, Goff did lead the Rams to the Super Bowl. Everyone's like, oh, they had a dominant defense. But the defense was ranked 20th in 2018, and the offense was ranked 2nd. So most of that work was Jared Goff and his passing.
And Sean McVay.
And Sean McVay. I think a lot to do with Jared Goff's downgrade was his relationship with McVay. Because we all know there was tension there. And I think that had a lot to do with why he wasn't performing very well, because McVay, in a way, didn't want him to. I know that sounds weird, but I mean that's how I saw it happen. When Goff would throw an interception, McVay would just throw the clipboard down and just look at him and just sigh. And I'm just like, this isn't a very good relationship here. So if Jared Goff can have a good relationship with his coach in Detroit, I do think he can play a bit better. I mean, he has the offensive line that he had in 2018. It's dominant. It's going to work. He has a run game. He doesn't have the receivers that he could. I mean, we have a deep threat with Quintez Cephas. We have the new signings and T.J. Hawkinson. I honestly think that he could find success in Detroit. And I think Holmes sees that as well. So fact.
Well, we'll give you that one, Anthony. Good for you. Thanks for putting that in the show notes. Let's keep on rolling. Let's go ahead and get to our... There you go. Anthony, you do a great job on the show. We'll let you get in your little Lions talk here and there. Awesome. Thanks. All right. Let's go ahead and go to our team deep dive of the week. As we mentioned earlier, we will be diving deep on the Atlanta Falcons. That's why we brought Will McFadden on. So, Will, we're going to start with what are your thoughts on the 2020 season just at a high level?
So this is the huge question, right? And it's something that I've thought a lot about, doing my own podcast and writing about the team and everything, where it's almost like they've had the talent. The talent's been there. You had Julio Jones, you had Calvin Ridley, you had Matt Ryan, you had Deion Jones, Grady Jarrett, all of these guys who are making the PFF top 50 player, top 100 player lists. But the production has not been there. So it's so hard to kind of try to figure out, well, what do they look like without Julio? What do they look like without the coaching staff that was in place? Which I actually think that the coaching staff was, what does it look like without Julio? What does it look like without just the coaching staff? Because I don't think the coaching staff was necessarily the problem, but I also kind of think that it's upgraded a little bit. But I do think that the personnel has decreased. Yeah, because of financial reasons. You're now without guys like Keanu Neal. You're now without Ricardo Allen, who was a huge leader on the defense. You're now without Alex Mack. Just all of these different pieces. But I could also see Arthur Smith just being a really good coach and Dean Pease being a really good coach and getting the best out of the players that are on the roster. So that's where I fluctuate between, is this like a 5 and whatever the number is now that there's 17 games, 12 teams? Yeah.
12.
Right.
Yeah, I know. We always got to do the math.
Is this like a 10-7 team that sneaks into the postseason? Is this a 12-5 team? Who knows? Because you still have good players at the most important positions. You still have a marquee quarterback. You still have a marquee linebacker in Deion Jones. You have a good defensive tackle in Grady Jarrett. I think A.J. Terrell has the makings of being a number one corner, but it's the question marks in Eric Harris, Daron Harmon, those guys at safety. What do they do? You drafted Richie Grant. Are the rookies able to step in and play really well from the get-go? Is Kyle Pitts truly a difference maker in year one?
This is competitive.
Yeah, I mean, when you have teams like, obviously with Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, they're the reigning Super Bowl champions. I think Carolina is really going to take a leap this year. I'm a big fan of both Matt Rule and Joe Brady. And having talked to Matt Rule at the Combine, I think 2 years ago, he's really smart. And obviously you can't count the Saints out. The Falcons are going to have their work cut out for them in 2020, but that'll be the test. How good is Arthur Smith? How good is this coaching staff? And I'm really excited to see this 2021 season because I really want to know the answer to that question.
And I was going to ask you at the Julio trade next, but I want to skip ahead to the next question. We'll come back to Julio. Since you mentioned Arthur Smith a few times, you have a sound of hopeful optimism. Obviously, he did a fantastic job in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill and really elevating that offense. How do you feel about the Arthur Smith hire as head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a sense of, ever since the Kyle Shanahan hire in San Francisco, followed up with the Sean McVay hire in LA, the offensive guru is now very much in vogue in the NFL. But to me, Arthur Smith reminds me a little bit more of like Brian Daboll. And, he said recently that he was a hot commodity. He had 6 or 7 different interviews for head coaching jobs around the NFL. So people clearly are high on what he can do. But he reminds me a little bit more, and this is not a surprise coming from Mike Vrabel's system in Tennessee, but a little bit more Belichickian. And I'm very curious to see how the offensive ingenuity of the modern NFL mixes with that Belichick mindset of do your job, of, we're out here to compete. We're going to hold guys accountable, because Dan Quinn was a player coach. And I think that almost sometimes worked to the detriment of Atlanta at times, where guys weren't necessarily penalized for not doing their job. And I think Arthur Smith is the right mindset. And if he establishes a culture of accountability while also having a kind of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of offensive mind, Atlanta's going to be great. Like, they're going to be really good, because I think that combination will really, really work. And I think it's something that Atlanta's been missing for a while.
So you think he could come in and create the Falcon way in the way that Belichick created the Patriot way, bring in some more discipline. I'm on board too. I got to say, I like what I see so far. And I think that arrows up with regards to that hire. So let's talk about Julio. So obviously you've mentioned it a few times that it was a necessary trade seemingly with regards to the cap issues that Atlanta had. But he is Julio Jones. He's a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. He's older, but he's not completely past his prime. When he was healthy last season, he still looked like Julio. But what are your thoughts on the fact that the trade happened, the terms of the deal? Let us know.
Yeah, I know from a Falcons fan perspective, it sucks. Obviously, this is a guy who is maybe the single most talented player, up there with Deion Sanders and Dominique Wilkins in terms of Atlanta sports history. And
don't forget about Dale Murphy now.
Julios. You what?
I said, don't forget about Dale Murphy now. Sorry. Bad 80s Braves reference.
There you go. But I mean, there are no other Julios. Like Calvin Johnson, Anthony, for your comparison, like Julio is Calvin. Like that's the type of, and former Georgia Tech wide receiver. So there you go. There's the Atlanta just makes wide receivers. That's what we do. But I think that they will. Atlanta's always had a really good succession plan at wide receiver. They went from Roddy White to Julio Jones to now Calvin Ridley, and they've always been Thomas Dimitroff has been really good at drafting that position over years past. So Calvin's different than Julio, but it sucks. I mean, losing. Everybody thought here, especially when the owner Arthur Blank said Julio will retire a Falcon. He'll be a Falcon for life. That was the expectation. Julio Jones is going to be an Atlanta Falcon. And I know one of the things that everybody took pride in was Julio's no nonsense. And having talked to him, he doesn't brag about himself. He doesn't care about all the sideshow. He doesn't care about, where do I rank in the NFL amongst wide receivers. He just wants to go out and do his job. The dude owns a Kia dealership. What wide receiver owns a Kia dealership? Like that's Julio. He's so talented. He's so physically gifted, and yet he's so humble. And so it really does stink for Atlanta to kind of lose out on a player like that. That being said, I understand why the Falcons did it. They had to for financial reasons, and it was the position where they could afford to lose a player like Julio because they have a future number one in Calvin. And, that's kind of as simply as I can put it. Personally, I have nothing but respect for Julio Jones, the person, the player. He's as humble as they come. He's as talented and gifted as they come. But life is what it is. And I think fully Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot took this job understanding that Julio Jones was not going to be here in 2021.
Yeah, and on the Julio thing, while we have you, as someone who's covered the Falcons closely, do you think that the call to Shannon Sharpe on Undisputed, was that staged, or do you think he truly did not know that he was on the air?
I don't think he knew he was on the air.
That was our speculation as well.
Yeah.
So you think it was just he's calling Shannon and they just kind of his reaction was real, was genuine.
I think Shannon called him, and I believe that Julio did not know that he was on the air because again, if Julio came to the Falcons earlier on in this offseason and requested a trade, Julio's the type of person where they kept it all behind the scenes. Julio's not a diva receiver. If he wanted that to be out, it would have been out way earlier than 2 weeks before he was actually traded. So I don't believe that he realized that he was on air at that time.
All right, good to know. Hey, Tommy, guess what? We're right. All right, let's move ahead to the future of the Falcons. So Atlanta Falcons drafted at number 4, something that they're not usually used to doing as far as drafting that high. There was a lot of speculation prior to Matt Ryan's restructuring of his contract. Do they take a quarterback at 4? Obviously, they took tight end Kyle Pitts, restructured Ryan's contract, but what are your thoughts, honestly? Do you think they should have taken the opportunity of being this high when there's a good quarterback class? Justin Fields was still there at 4. Do you think they should have gone that route, or do you think restructuring Ryan, keeping him on for a few more years, and drafting Kyle Pitts was the right move?
Yeah, I mean, pre-draft, I was all in on Justin Fields. I was all in on the quarterback, drafting Matt Ryan's successor. Post-draft, I feel like an idiot because obviously a number of teams after the Falcons who were kind of in the market for a quarterback passed up on Justin Fields. And I feel like the Bears feel like they're, having a field day that he ended up, no pun intended there, but
a Fields day.
A Fields day. And they're justified for feeling that way. But
nice.
I think that if the Falcons truly did understand that they were going to have life without Julio, then Kyle Pitts makes sense. You still need kind of that unicorn in your offense. And I understand why Arthur Smith would want to have that. And Matt Ryan is still a good quarterback. We're sitting here talking about Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay saying Matthew Stafford's even better than advertised. Imagine if he had Matt Ryan. And Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan are very, very close friends. They play basketball together in the offseason. They are as tight as they come, and I think of them very similarly as quarterbacks. They may not be the Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilsons of the world, but they're definitely that second tier, and they're probably the top of the second tier. And it's a former league MVP, and we're seeing Tom Brady, who I feel wary about comparing any quarterback to Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers for that matter, but those guys are playing super well at a late stage in their career, and quarterback is one position where you can do that. So I don't blame Terry Fontenot or Arthur Smith in saying, look, let's move on from our 32-year-old wide receiver and let's keep our 36-year-old quarterback, because our quarterback can play into his 40s and he's still a very good player. And I think if Arthur Smith's offense does resemble Kyle Shanahan's in any way, shape, or form, well, that's when Matt Ryan won his MVP. And let's roll that back and let's see what you've got around him and figure it out later. And I don't think necessarily people saying that, well, they need to now draft a quarterback in 2022 or 2023. Matt Ryan could be the quarterback here for 3 or 4 seasons. They can figure this out if they really want to. I don't blame Arthur Smith for trying to see what he's got under the hood in Matt Ryan.
I saw reports that Arthur Smith always wanted to keep Ryan, and he wanted to draft a playmaker, and it was not looking to draft a quarterback. And Terry Fontenot, I believe, was on the same side as Smith, but I did see some reports that the owner, Arthur Blank, actually wanted to draft a quarterback. Do you put any credence in that?
Justin Fields is a local guy. obviously played high school football in Georgia, was the number 2 overall recruit behind Trevor Lawrence, who also, played quarterback in Georgia. So it wouldn't shock me if Arthur really wanted to bring back a quarterback who is a homegrown kid. Obviously, the Falcons were probably never more popular than the Michael Vick era, and Justin Fields would be favorable to a certain portion of the Falcons fan base, the ones that were very Michael Vick friendly.
Especially Madden players. Everybody played with Atlanta and Madden.
Exactly. 2004 Vick era, man. You can't beat it. Yep. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if that was kind of the choice, frankly, for Terry or Arthur. Terry Fontenot's job is to think about the future. Arthur Smith's job is to think about the present. And there is a little bit of a battle there where we're at the quarterback position where Arthur Smith says, hey, in 2021, the best chance for me to win is with Matt Ryan. In 2022, the best chance for me to win is with Matt Ryan. But Terry Fontenot's sitting there saying, hey, what about 2025? Am I going to keep my job because we've got the contingency plan in place? That's what he's thinking about. And if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm not Arthur Blank, but he loves Matt Ryan more than anybody. I mean, I know that for a fact that he adores Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's been the most successful player in franchise history. But, Arthur also does think about the long-term success of the franchise. And if you have the opportunity to draft a new quarterback who also happens to be a homegrown kid and is athletic and mobile and can do a lot of exciting things, it wouldn't shock me if Arthur Blank was kind of on board with that. No, that doesn't surprise me.
And not to go down this rabbit hole, but the dynamic you're describing between probably all GMs and head coaches is similar to what's going on in Green Bay, where Matt LaFleur, I think, is clearly all in on getting Rodgers, where Gutekunst is more, what does my team look like 5 years from now? So I think that's a real dynamic. What about the rest of their draft class? What do you think about the rest of Atlanta's draft class this year?
It's really interesting, and I think I mentioned this actually earlier today on my own podcast, but if Kyle Pitts was not the number one, the first round pick, I think that Richie Grant would be talked about a lot more because he is such a fun player to watch. When I watched his tape at UCF, the dude is just dynamite. I mean, he's dynamic in every way that you want a safety to be dynamic. He can cover deep. He can make plays on the ball. He can come up and knock the snot out of somebody and make tackles in the run game. So Richie Grant is maybe my favorite pick of the draft, and I say that knowing full well that Kyle Pitts is also a member of this draft class, but I really like the Richie Grant pick. I think Jalen Mayfield could end up being a real sleeper in this class. I know he really kind of only had 1 year at Michigan where he was a prominent figure of their offensive line, but offensive linemen are a little bit of a tricky character there, and he's got a lot of the traits that I personally prefer in an offensive lineman. So I love the Jalen Mayfield pick. Frank Darby is a firecracker as a personality, which means absolutely nothing on the football field, but it's fun from a media standpoint. And he's just a really good personality on a team that doesn't have a ton of really good personalities. And also, I think that he fits this offense in the sense that the Kyle Shanahan offense, and I almost feel like we just credit Kyle Shanahan with inventing the West Coast play action offense too much, but I'm going to just continue to use that. But that offense really does rely on a deep threat to stretch the defense to allow you to do all of the action underneath. I think that's where Frank Darby fits best, and I don't know if the Falcons had somebody like that. So he makes sense for me on this team. I really like the draft class because, frankly, like if you hit on 3 or 4 players in a draft, then it's a good draft. And I like 3 or 4 of their guys. And if they pan out, maybe not in year 1, if Richie and and Kyle Pitts pan out in year 1, awesome. If by year 3, you've got 4 or 5 of these guys who have significant roles on this team, then it's a really good draft, and we're looking at Terry Fontenot as probably a pretty good GM. And I like what they've done so far. I like the additions they made in the draft because they had to hit on their draft. They didn't have any money to spend in free agency.
You mentioned earlier that there were some talent depletions on their roster. Anything they missed? I mean, as you mentioned, that their salary cap situation was so tight at one point. I think they weren't able to sign their rookie class because they literally didn't have enough cap space. But is there anything they could have gone after that they didn't? Any holes or weaknesses they didn't address, maybe in the draft as well?
I believe the financial discrepancy you're alluding to is the Julio Jones scenario, but yes, they had to move on from a star player because they literally could not sign a draft class. But their pass rush is not going to be good in 2021. I can go ahead and guarantee you that right now. And the reason I know that is because their defensive coordinator, Dean Pease, has said, we're going to be blitzing from everywhere. We are Leroy Jenkinsing the crap out of opposing offenses, and everybody's just running in full speed and
I'm not sure Tommy or Anthony got that quote, but I did, and I very much appreciate your Leroy Jenkins mention.
There you go.
Oh, don't worry. I picked it up, actually. It's like the first time I get a pop culture reference in a while.
Hey, Tommy got one. And if you haven't looked at the Flavor of the Week notes, Leroy Jenkins, that's relevant. Okay, so continue, Will.
Multiple YouTube references from me today, so I'm on fire.
Nice.
But they're going to be blitzing everywhere, and they're sending linebackers, safeties, corners, defensive ends, what have you, because they don't have the tried and true pass rushers. Yes, they have Dante Fowler, but he was a little bit of a disappointment last year, and I think he's going to be in kind of like a 3-4 stand-up role this year. I actually think that the pass rush will surprise people in 2021. I think that's where I'm kind of zagging a little bit, is everybody's down on the Falcons pass rush. I think it'll be a little bit better, but that being said, it's still absolutely a hole and absolutely a weakness. You know, when Grady Jarrett is your best pass rusher, Grady Jarrett's awesome. He's not Aaron Donald. Yeah, he's not going to
he has a deal. Over a game. Did they restructure his deal yet? I know that he's having contract negotiations, right?
No, they haven't yet. The last I heard, they haven't actually even reached out to him about restructuring, and I kind of feel like that's because, or at least this would be my stance, is what does he look like in this defense? You know, he's a really good 4-3 defensive tackle where he's kind of in that 3 technique and he's working one-on-one. But if they start going more 3-4, which has been Dean Pease's MO over the years, you know, throughout his career, is he still a really effective pass rusher if he's maybe getting double teamed? My personal philosophy is that maybe they're waiting to see, because he's got a couple years left on his deal, and they don't have to make a move right now and add cap space the next couple of seasons for him. They can wait and see. They freed up the cap space with Julio, and I think they can wait and see with Grady. But to answer your question, the pass rush is still not too great in Atlanta.
So let's wrap it up. The question we ask everybody who comes on to do their team deep dives, and what are your predictions for 2021? I know you said earlier it could be anywhere from 5-12 to 10-7, but we want you to plant your flag. Let us know what kind of season you predict them to have this year.
Before I get to the record, let me say I think the Matt Ryan bounce back season is in full effect. I think Matt will have a really good year, and I think that will be really interesting with Julio being gone. But I think Matt's going to have a great season because all of the reasons that I said about Kyle Shanahan and the issues with him turning his back to the defense and all of that, he's overcome that. That was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So Matt Ryan, I think, is going to have a really, really good season and once again be probably a Pro Bowl quarterback. Predictions for 2021. It's tough. I'm going to say 8 and 9, but I think they finished the year.
I hate how that sounds.
I think they
right?
finished the year winning 3 of their last 5.
Okay. Nice. So then they'll finish with some promise in Arthur Smith's first season. Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. They, especially on the offense, I think that offense is going to be fun to watch. So having a Matt Ryan resurgent season, yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. So let's go ahead and wrap it up there. Will, you may or may not be sticking around for the flavor of the week. I hope that you are, especially with your Leroy Jenkins quote. I think you really appreciate what we're going to talk about. Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out, we just revamped our website, pigskinpartypodcast.com. We want to hear from you. You know, we've really been getting a lot of listener feedback and a lot of new listeners lately, and we really appreciate everybody who's tuning in. So feel free to send us an email with topic suggestions. We will be announcing our multiple fantasy football leagues soon, so go ahead and shoot us an email at pigskinpartypodcast@gmail.com if you're interested in being a part of that. Please don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends, keep on leaving those 5-star reviews on iTunes. We're still batting 1,000, and as long as our co-host Will doesn't come on the show, we're going to keep that going. It's always a risk when he's on. Check us out on Twitter at officialpppod. This will be up on YouTube. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you want to join our Discord community, we'll have a link in the episode description. And as I mentioned earlier, we will also have a link for Legit Football. If you want to get free 5 minutes or less daily NFL news every single day in your inbox, go ahead and sign up for Legit Football. Thanks again for listening, and stick around for the flavor of the week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.